Hello YouTubers, it's Travis. I found an article on Twitter yesterday morning that really spoke to me. It was by Richard Garfield, the creator of Magic and various other games, as I joked in the video. But I read the article on stream and went over some of my thoughts about it, and honestly just wanted to share that with you guys and gals. It talked a little bit about how Magic has changed over time with the implementation of Arena. And it really spoke to me. Maybe you'll get something out of it too. I hope that you'll enjoy the dramatic reading of Richard Garfield's article. Thank you for watching and supporting my nonsense. We'll see you next time. All right. So let's dive into this. This is an article by Richard Garfield. Richard Garfield is a game designer. He designed the hit game Artifact, for example. And I found this article this morning, and I read it, and I read it again, and it really hit me about some of the things that have happened with Magic and Arena and digital gaming out there together. I think that this is going to be a Magic conversation more than a just chatting conversation. Because like this really hit a lot of thoughts for me and a lot of highs and lows, and like it really got me. But I'm going to start with reading out the entire article. If you'd like to read it yourself, you can find it on various Twitter people. I mentioned that huge MTG personalities are talking about it, like Reed Duke and the Mana League. I also posted it in my Discord under the Magic discussion section. Anyway, Keep Your Numbers Off Me, Why Tournaments Support Better Communities Than Ladders by Richard Garfield. Recently, I started playing a digital game. There was a tournament announced for the top players. Although I wasn't a top player, the game was new enough and there was enough luck in the play that I thought maybe I could qualify, so I started paying attention to my ranking. Quickly, I noticed that I was having less fun because I was no longer experimenting and trying new things. I was focusing on what I knew worked. I began to lean more heavily on what other people said was correct rather than finding my own way. Losses were setbacks rather than learning experiences. When I rose to a level that corresponded to my actual skill, I stalled. Then the games became more samey, with the players mostly playing similar styles. I noticed that I felt like a mediocre player even though I was in the top 10%. The experience brought into focus and made personal some of the misgivings I've had about extensive player rankings in games. Whatever made me want to play in a tournament anyway? Isn't that something only the best do? In the non-digital world, all levels of players participate in tournaments for almost any game or sport. Most players in most of these games and sports are rarely ranked. The only times I was ranked with a skill system in an analog game was in chess, and even then only in tournaments. Yet I could often find tournaments for games that interested me. For example, I played bridge for years, participating in a club and many tournaments, but I never had a skill-based rating applied to me until I played online. In sports, it was similar. If I got into a sport, then I would participate in leagues and tournaments. I was rarely ranked, and when I was, it was based only on the results of a few tournaments. It wasn't the default mode of play. If you contrast this to my digital gameplay, it is striking. My play is almost always ranked in some way. If I opt out of that, as is sometimes possible, then the player quality is generally so bad that it isn't worth playing if I can find any opponents at all. I mean, that's kind of relatable to me so far. It was at that point I was like, I'm going to read the rest of this article. And we're a fourth of the way through it. This is a short article, but there's some real points in here. What is a tournament? It's worthwhile thinking about what distinguishes a tournament from ladder play. I would say a tournament has a fixed length of time, a bounded number of games, and a set of participants that is fixed from the start. Sometimes leagues fit this description, though many online leagues allow players to play as often as they like within a certain time frame, which makes it more of a form of a ranking or ladder and less of a tournament. Similarly, the more players join and leave the league while in progress, the less like a tournament it is. A tournament is less about who is actually the best player and more about who plays best on a particular day or handful of days. It's more like a game. One way to think about it is, can the underdog win? If I'm in an 8-person chess league and am 50 points below the other 7 players, it's unlikely at any given time that I'll be ranked much above the very bottom. However, if we had a direct elimination tournament, I have about an 8% chance of winning and a 40% chance to end up in the top half. If I did win, although an underdog, I would have played the best on that day for that tournament, and it would be recognized rather than lost in the noise of long-term statistics. We're going to talk about MMR. Buckle in. Are even matches always best? Matching players with evenly matched players is one of the main reasons for ladder play. This is not without its merits, but it also isn't strictly a good thing. If you match people precisely, then there's no sense of progress because players will win about half of their games regardless of how good they get. When playing in tournaments or communities, it's much easier to feel a sense of accomplishment precisely because these environments are not highly curated to be fair. The sense of progress is not just about being able to play against weaker opponents, it's probably even more about allowing players to play against stronger opponents, ones they can learn from and aspire to defeat. This is particularly problematic when a player doesn't value their rating and sees it as just something that punishes you with harder games. It's always easier to play lower level games, just lose a bunch. Unfortunately, that means that the only way to play against harder players is to wait for someone to tank their ranking just so they can have easy wins. I want to play against better players, but not players who are cheating the system to get a sense of power. Playing below your skill doesn't give a bad Playing below your skill doesn't just give a bad experience to people who are beaten in this way. It also breaks the illusion that winning means anything for the players who beat them when they are intentionally losing, and artificially inflates their rating so that they will have more losses in the future. Y'all know what smurfing is? Anybody ever heard of that? Like, I realize I'm going to talk about this as it applies to MTG Arena. You guys probably figured that out, right? But like, what's going on here is you can tank your rating or you can just go smurf. So the idea of smurfing, Timber, let's say we're playing, well, there's that, but there is a monthly reset on Draft Hero, right, Chris? So like, I did start a new account for that, but I could have just done it on my main and waited long enough for it to decay. I don't think this terribly well applies to Magic, actually, because it resets monthly anyway. But let's take a game that has a longer reset, or maybe one that you would grind more for, or maybe there's different skill settings. So like, let's say it's Counter-Strike. They have a ranking system. I haven't played a lot of Counter-Strike, and I don't actually remember what the ranking system was. I kind of just played with Marty. But as you got better and better, you were definitively more skilled. Like, if Marty and I tried to 1v1 in Counter-Strike, he was always going to kill me. He was just better than me, right? So what if Marty, rather than playing at his skill level, and let's say that it was Platinum, made a new account and went into the Bronze Leagues, he's just going to murder everyone. And that's what he's talking about here, is people are sometimes, with a rank system, incentivized to do that. Yeah, sandbagging. They talk about that too in some other sports. But it's the same thing. It's absolutely the same thing. You're right. All right, so keep that in mind. I don't think that this necessarily applies to Arena, although there are people that have done that, like intentionally lost a bunch of constructed games so they could go grind constructed. But and also bear in mind, when I'm talking about Magic or Arena, I specifically mean limited. I don't really play a lot of constructed. If I do, we'll call that out. All right, let's get to the next bracket. We're almost halfway through with this. Ladders are dangerous motivators. If a player cares about their ranking, every time they play, something of value is at risk. This naturally makes a more antagonistic play environment, especially with players of differing skills. We might otherwise hope that the stronger player would mentor the weaker, perhaps even play in a laid-back, casual manner, taking the opportunity to experiment. Instead, any adjustment of play will reduce the expected win percent, and against a lower-ranked player, it could cost a lot. A player who values their rating must always bring their best game. It's worth thinking closely about the case of mismatched players playing for a rating. I've been in environments where the higher-ranked players saw it as an advantage and would hunt lower-ranked players. I've also been in environments where the higher-ranked player saw it as a disadvantage and would be hostile if matched with a lower-ranked player. It doesn't matter whether the rating algorithm is accurate or not. If the perception errs one way or another, there will be an unwelcoming environment for lower-ranked players. I've advocated in games in the past to simply have a cutoff, and if one player is favored to win, say, 2/3 of the time or more, the game is never rated. Partly because of this, many digital games have ratings, but share them only in a limited way. They will give you a very general category, like gold, and even if you know your own ranking, they may obscure the opponent's. Often, this is a result of tests the developers ran where they found players quitting games when they were facing a higher-ranked player, or even leaving the game entirely when losing a few times and seeing their score go down. It seems like this should be a sign that something is wrong with ubiquitous rating. It's a bit crazy, really, having a system to motivate play, which, if treated too transparently, causes people to quit. Your ideal is a system where players can advertise their accomplishments and see their opponent's accomplishments, which does not automatically put one player lower on the pecking order. When I fenced on a team, we had a general understanding of who on the team was better. But even if I wasn't the best, I had my clutch victories and my occasional excellent tournament results. Each member of the team was a unique asset, not a number. I have to imagine my experience would have been much worse if everyone's ranking were plastered on them at all times and were being adjusted every time we played. And that's a lot better, actually, than we could hope for in most digital environments, where your rank is usually against everyone in the entire world. I hate playing Mythic and Best of One where I feel I have to be 100% on my game and can't relax. Fair. This motivation discussion paired with matching players reminds me of Valorant. Strategy of pairing players that like certain guns with other players that have school skins for said guns. I mean, that's a great way to pair people from their perspective. Can kind of see the gun skins advertised. I didn't know that they'd done that, but it doesn't surprise me. There's a bazillion different ways you can pair people. Hey, good morning, Scott. Thank you for the resub.
The Caribbean.
Cheers. Enjoy some sun today, dude. I have the first set of invitational sleeves enlightened. All right. Next section. Numbers that always go up. There's a part of this that really hit me, and I'm going to stop and we're going to discuss it deeply. Developers face a conundrum, which is that the game community generally wants a measure of skill, which is represented in numbers that always go up. This is one reason for the secrecy that sometimes shrouds how rankings are represented. A purely skill-based rating system must cost the player points from time to time. Many systems cheat that for a while, perhaps only having the players lose points above a certain rank, and until then they can ratchet their way up without having to worry about losses. Usually this is viewed as players wanting something unreasonable. You can't have a measure of skill which is just cumulative. But you can celebrate accomplishment in an accumulative way, and the accomplishments can have a strong correlation to skill. In games and sports, this is often the collection of trophies a player has won throughout their career. When an accumulative system exists in a digital game, it's often nearly meaningless. How many games have you won? For most games and most players, this is transparently proportionate to how many times have you played, particularly if the players are matched to have fair games. The key is to get accomplishments the player truly values, and tournaments are a great way to offer something that is skill dependent without threatening to take something away from them. To do this in a way that all players can participate, it's necessary that there are different trophies for different difficulties of achievements. Putting a numeric value on the trophies and converted into the big one trophy value under... Let me try that again. This section didn't truly resonate with me, but I do want to discuss the whole thing. Putting a numeric value on the trophies and converted into one big trophy value undermines their value. It doesn't matter how many high school trophies I accumulated, there is no amount of them that equals a world championship, but that doesn't mean high school trophies are meaningless. Bridge did this quite well, in a way I failed to appreciate when I actively played. Players get points for many events, often even club play. These points are color-coded, so if someone has a huge number of black points, it really mostly means that they'd played a long time. But silver, red, gold, and platinum represent accomplishments in events that are progressively broader and more prestigious. Some players will find silver points challenging to get and treasure the ones they have, while for others the silver are noise, and the only ones that represent accomplishment in their eyes might be the platinum points, and over a player career, what they value will shift. That's fascinating. I skimmed over that when I was initially reading this because I was like, okay, get to the part that I want to shake my fist about. But the idea that there can be different skill levels and different points. And I suppose that that's a thing that does exist in Arena as we're collecting it to that, right? Like some people, God, I think it was Spivey a long time ago used to call rank 5 in Hearthstone Dad Mythic or Dad Legend. And I think Dave talked some about Platinum being Dad Mythic, right? Yeah. All right, here's the part where I started getting a little more invested. Are ladders the best way to choose our champions? It's not actually even clear that the top players on a ladder are the best. I'm sure that sometimes they are, but often the top echelon of a competitive ladder is filled with a groupthink and adherence to whatever is perceived as the top-level metagame. A long time ago, I divided players into innovators and honers. Oh God, this is making me emotional to read it. Innovators wanted to find new strategies in games, while honers would take those strategies and squeeze all the value out of them. The deal was that innovators would come up with something new and surprising and do well with it. In the long run, the honers were always the champions, but their reign was broken up by innovation. Of course, in practice, most players are a mix, and there are occasional champions who arise who do both very well, but there was a pattern in a lot of games as I saw it. Ladders are a honer's paradise, grinding out long-term value from their incrementally better play. You could win tournaments on innovation. If you bring innovation to a ladder, players will learn to play against it, or adopt it themselves before you can get very far. You can't really get to the top of a big ladder that way. The grind is so long that any value you bring will be absorbed by the honers on the way. They will adopt it, or learn to play around it. They will add its uniqueness to their own. This decreases the incentive to innovate, which increases the chance of a stale metagame. He's going to go through an example in a game you may have heard of. An example from a Magic tournament history illustrates this well. There was a season where the metagame collapsed into a single strategy built around the card Necropotence. The community complained it needed to be changed because it was the only way to win. Organized play left it, however, and what do you know? There was a radical new deck type that was entered into the World Championship. If all play had been on a ladder, the innovators would have had to give the other players their glory. Is it even possible there would be no glory to be had? Players on ladder can adapt to the changes even after they lost some ground. Maybe Necropotence would even have remained supreme after some strategic adjustments. The pressure of thinking on your feet in the face of something new isn't as big a part of ladder play, but is one of the things that makes tournaments so exciting. This one got me because some of the first esports tournaments that came out for MTG Arena were the Twitch Rivals events. Before there was anything else, there was those. And I tested with Dave and with the testing team for those tournaments, and I top 4 to both of them. I'm the only person that did. They were constructed tournaments, but it was clear that that was the focus of Arena in the beginning. And you may have seen the clip at the beginning of the stream where I cast heroic reinforcements, kill somebody, snap my fingers, and go, there you go. That was from that Twitch Rival stream. Yeah, exclamation point lethal. So that event for me, I innovated a deck. Dave helped me hone it. So did Ashley and some of the other gals in that testing group I was in. Interestingly, all of them got invited to the Mythic Invitational, which I was happy for. They were a great team of people, and I enjoyed playing with them and testing with them. We worked together to figure out that deck. We innovated it, and it was not a deck that existed before that tournament. You wouldn't see it on the ladder, and it really didn't exist after that, because once you knew that it was out there and how to play around it, it kind of wasn't any good anymore. But like, that was my moment in the sun. I built a deck to do well in that tournament, and I did. And I'm incredibly proud of that. Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's like you would get at a Pro Tour deck. And I had that moment to get to build that deck and experience it. And it was super fun. It was super fun. I miss getting to do that. Now, you can't have tournaments like that all the time, right? But all right, what else can we do? One reason digital games skew towards ladders rather than tournaments is that they're very easy to manage. Running a tournament involves scheduling things, or at least being pretty clever. One should keep in mind, though, that while tournaments present some challenges in the digital world, they are at least as challenging to arrange in the analog world, and yet game communities have always managed to do it. I mean, that's a tournament wallet, right? One such clever approach is something like Hearthstone Arena, which is a bit like an asynchronous tournament. It doesn't meet my definition exactly, but it does do a lot of the same things. When you play it, Sorry, that's clunky. When you play it, you play a pool of players that isn't, to my knowledge, selected to be fair. They're matched to your record win within the arena run as closely as possible. Winning is hard. It represents beating more than 200 players. I believe it could support meaningful trophies. I played a lot and only won a few times. I would have been motivated if the system gave me a gold star for each. I cared a lot more about the victory itself than whatever the real prizes were, which were pretty much meaningless to me. I played for years, and when I left the game, there was really not much I felt attached to. The only thing the system seemed to care about is where I was on their ladder. It didn't bother to track the biggest accomplishments I had. Dude, this one speaks to me. I have played Hearthstone's Arena. And Hearthstone's Arena is basically best of 3 drafting. I get prizes that I don't care about, and no one's tracking the things that I do care about. Sure, I can go to 17 lands and see who has the best win rate and blah, 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 blah. It'd be nice just to get to keep playing. But it'd also be cool to have, like, something. I'd like a gold star too, Mr. Garfield. I'm sure there are many approaches to enabling all levels of players to access tournament play. Just giving players tools to do it themselves is useful. Spectator Mode. I'll give you one of my favorite tournament concepts here. Create tiers of tournaments so that entering a higher level tournament requires winning, or perhaps doing well on the previous level. That's crazy. Like maybe some sort of qualifier. If a player has earned an entry to a level 2 tournament, they can spend it and perhaps get a ticket to a level 3 tournament. For level 2 and higher, being in the top 50% will get you another ticket to the same tier. Prizes, whether real prizes or badges and virtual honors, increase with each tier. With this approach, better players will gravitate toward the higher tier tournaments because it has a better payoff. The same principle works with poker. The best players don't hang out at the lowest stakes table. It isn't worth their time. On the other hand, if a player doesn't feel like playing seriously, they can play lower level tournaments and save some of their high level tickets for when they want to really focus. And it isn't cheating the system. There is no logic in this place. What's up, Manny? Note that with such a structure, and with 8-person tournaments, winning a level 5 tournament represents defeating over 32,000 people. No player is more than a few good tournaments from the top level play. It is true that as a player climbs the ranks, the wait between tournaments will grow. This is not necessarily a bad thing. Digital environments often introduce artificial time constraints to generate excitement or create habits in their players. This can be effective, but can also feel manipulative. Here, there is an opportunity to have a time constraint for a legitimate reason, a reason that should make people who are waiting for a game feel good. They're among the few who have qualified for the rank of tournament for which they are waiting. It is exhilarating playing in an event for a game you like, pitted against a wide range of player skills and seeing how far you can make it. Each is a fresh roll of the dice, and you can craft a story that your high and low points tell. They aren't boiled down with all your performances to a number that over time tries to define your value as a player. There are many games cropping up in the last several years that provide that without really being tournaments. I'm thinking of games like Fortnite and to a lesser extent auto chess. Players don't expect to win every time with 8+ opponents, and it makes victories and near victories all that much more exciting. I think a lot of what players get out of these games, they could get out of other games if the other games were not so committed to putting everyone on a list. That's getting incredibly pedantic, Standard Beat. Like, sure, maybe you're right. It's not... He's saying if you climb to that tournament and then win that tournament, it represents beating a lot of people. Like, you didn't beat 100 other Magic players when you win a GP, but you kind of did, right? Like, it's fine. It's getting the idea across. Like, this spoke to me. This really, really spoke to me. And I think he's onto something too. Like, I played PUBG some. I wasn't very good at it. I remember all of my wins. I think I won the whole thing. Okay, I think I maybe won the whole thing like 5 times. And I definitely remember 2 of them. One of them's on the stream highlights because I was streaming it. Another one wasn't. And I remember the map. I remember what I did. I remember where I went. I remember them because they were valuable to me and I didn't have that many of them. And he's right. There was no ranking there. There was no matchmaking. There was nothing that had to go. So like, I think that's what he meant from the Fortnite perspective. So. I'll never forget my GP top 8 and the Pro Tour invite that didn't come with it, that made them entirely rework the structure of Team GPs so that that would never happen to anyone else. Not that I'm bitter about it, but it was still freaking cool to top 8 a GP. Remember my first few wins in PUBG? I have over 5,000 hours and hundreds of wins. Yeah, dude, you remember that stuff. Yeah, I guess you do, Alexis, so we won't get in there. Oh. That was unintentional. I didn't even know you could stream without a category. That's why Tommy suggested a category, and I was like, no, you hush. So I just thought if there's anything you guys wanted to talk about, I wanted to share this. It's led me to basically decide I don't like what has happened to Arena. Which means maybe we can play some Magic Online this afternoon. Because like, this really spoke to me and kind of hit me hard, is like, that's just not the kind of game I want to play. I don't think I would mind the ladder if it wasn't pay to play. That's the part that still gets me. It feels not great. Because after reading this, I was basically in a position where I was like, let's think about two things. One is I could go back to Magic Online and play not often, but a couple of times a week. I could go do a sealed league. And that's close to a tournament, which is what Garfield is talking about here. And that used to be what I did all day long. We'd play 3 sealed leagues a day, and that was the stream. Or I could go back to Arena, boot up the best of 1 drafts, and start playing. But what he's talking about here with this honers versus innovators, you didn't bring a new deck to the ladder. That was stupid. You could bring a new deck to the tournament, right? So the ranked, the climb, the grind in best of 1 mythic limited play is to get to the end where you go to a tournament. And that tournament is constructed very often. Sometimes it's not. But that means you're not rewarded for innovating on that ladder. You can't. You need to play the best deck. And that's why you get into this situation of somebody will come in and say, Black-White is Silver Quill is the best deck, and you should force it. And they're right. If you want to climb on the best of 1 ladder, you don't draft what's open, you don't read signals, you don't do any of that. You draft whatever the best deck is, cross your fingers that you get a good version of it, and cut it like snot so that some scrub next to you that's trying to read signals and is an idiot will get into the bad color pair and pass you the good stuff. And I don't know, that doesn't sound cool to me. You probably could still get there drafting the other way. Like, I imagine if Ben Stark sat down, I don't know what he does. I don't watch Ben Stark. It's incredibly boring for me to watch Ben Stark because I agree with every single pick he makes. And then he's just better at me at playing the game. And I'm like, I start feeling insecure. Like, I'm as good a drafter as Ben. He's got me on gameplay, is what it is. That is one area where I could get better, and I will get better over time. But I imagine if he sat down and drafted best of 1 to Mythic, drafting the right way, he could do it because he's so much better at gameplay. I probably couldn't. I would have to just lean into drafting whatever the metagame is, which is exactly what Garfield was talking about here. This decreases the incentive to innovate, which increases the chance of a stale metagame. And then you get a response to it, which is let's just reprint new or print new cards. Like, that's why we have alchemy. That's the thing, John. Like, I don't know Kamigawa's metagame enough to be able to firmly say, you know, black-red is the best or whatever it is. But if it is, and the Virus Beetle's the card in that pack, you should take it. What John is referencing is at the Sweatsuit tournament, someone first picked a Virus Beetle. You can go back through the logs afterwards. And presumably there was a good rare and better stuff to take. Because I can envision some packs where I might do that, but I can't think of very many. But if the ladder has taught them that you can only play black, white, or whatever the best color combo is, or maybe you just have to be black, it's the best color, then you should start cutting it right immediately. I can remember, I think it was Eckel, who's like very good at getting rank 1 mythic. second picked a green combat trick to cut green in one of the tournaments before. Like, that's just a perspective of someone who's like, I'm going to play whatever the best color is and cut it to pieces. And it just kind of killed, it makes limited less fun for me. So there's the article. These are my thoughts about it. If you guys have some and want to discuss it, happy to chit chat for a bit. If not, we can have lunch and maybe try out some Magic. I think you dumped them while I was doing IT support. But I think Garfield makes some points. It's led me to want to explore some alternative things. Rank sucks, but I struggle to think of a replacement for it that fits in the free-to-play model. These are really good questions. I like both of them. Thank you for condensing that down, Dave. Does it need to be free to play? Okay. So what's a game that is free to play and has ranking? Because okay, well let's try this here. Are we considering MTG Arena to be free to play? Because I do not consider, from my perspective, I understand there's constructed, right? Free to enter events. Forget free to play. I mean, what I've often thought, Mike, like if I was going to do it, I mean, when Hearthstone's Battlegrounds first came out, if you wanted to play that, you had to basically pay $40 and you got to pick 4 heroes, or maybe it was 20. They actually had it as like a pre-order for some cards. What if we start the whole thing over and drafting for rank? The tables are ranked, the draft is ranked. And you need to buy a battle pass to get in. It's $20 for each set, or $50 for each set, or $200 for each set. Whatever it is, it's an amount. And you get bundles of cosmetics and all sorts of cool stuff. And then you go into draft pools with other ranked players. And then there's a punishment mechanic for like dropping before you play your games. Yeah, I like tournaments too, but I'm trying to think of what Mike was talking about too. It certainly is. It certainly is. But I can say with the rise of the Battle Royale games, it does kind of give you this example of what if there wasn't matchmaking and it was just a free-for-all? Who should have to pay the least most money? The weekly player, the daily player, the serious player, the streamer? Hey, maybe you will again one day, Alexis. Yeah, and you know, you had mentioned Storybook Brawl and Teamfight Tactics might be another one. You're always in a lobby with 8 players. Like, frankly, that's the one thing that Arena has just done incredibly poorly. I don't feel that good when I go 3-0 in a draft. Yeah, I don't know that ranked play is bad for everything. I think it actually did work pretty well in games like Counter-Strike. Yeah, that's not a good place to be. It's a really bad place to be, Alexis. And that's where I've been for the last little bit on Arena, is like, I would get the 2-1 and feel awful. And then I'd get the 3-1 and be like, phew, okay, I did the bare minimum. Well, I stopped best of 3-2 for a little bit, which means I'm just not playing. Because I'm not playing best of 1. At least I don't intend to. I guess I could boot up the draft hero thing and try forcing decks and see if if it strikes something within me. But I guess the thing for me is like the drafting was always the fun part. And then I had to play the games after to prove that I drafted a good deck. It wasn't... I made a draft hero account. It's on my YouTube, ! YouTube. And they did this thing where they gave you 3 free drafts for, I believe it was Ikoria, Amonkhet Remastered, and Kaladesh Remastered. They gave you 3 free entries. So I took those on a second account and got to Mythic without buying anything or grinding anything. Mainly because I'm really good at Ikoria, and that wasn't fair at all. So that account's still laying there, and I think it has enough for probably 2 or 3 drafts left in it. It was a journey and it was fun. It's the last time I played best of 1 draft, but it was actually fun. I enjoyed that. Kaladesh was great. Kaladesh Remastered. Not so much. I really hated the remastered sets they've done on Arena. I think it's incredibly well written. I agree with a lot of it. I'm not entirely sure what to do with it, but it managed to put into words for me some feelings I've had for a while and was like, go play what's fun. If I want to play some Magic, I can go play on Magic Online. I'll try it one more time and see where it goes. I like that idea, Dave. Give people more tournament opportunities. Yeah, I quit it a while back too. Like, I'm still going to go there and do the sweatsuit drafts. Those are fun. And it's convenient to quickly learn how to draft a format. But like, I'm hopeful that I'm not burned out on Magic, that I'm just burned out on Arena. So that's kind of what I want to try. I've enjoyed doing the History of Draft series. That's fun. That's why I wanted to play Magic Online today, Dave. Tournaments could be part of it too. Probably not, Wallet. Yeah, like if you take the time to build events, they can be a lot of fun. But like, honestly, one of the most fun events that I was involved with was the Anti-League. That was a blast. And I didn't even get to play in it, but I was fascinated by it. I am not planning to play any MTG Arena this week, no. I don't think I'm going to do anything on Arena until the sweatsuit next week. I might change my mind. I mean, hell, I'm flighty and flaky. Like, it's entirely possible I could pop up tomorrow and be like, we're going to get best of 1 Mythic constructed, go! But I liked the Anti-League. I guess my point about it was just, it was very difficult to set up and manage. I'm also self-aware, at least I've got that. So like the Anti-League was a good time, I just couldn't play in it and run it. I mean, I've had fun playing Constructed Magic before. And I've had some fun ranking up. But I also feel like I might be setting myself up for disappointment. But These are the ramblings of an old man. Thank you for listening. And of course, a big thank you to my patrons. Thank you, Paul, Punk, Hero, Joe, Jesse, Jacob, Scott, Fasty, Rich, Brandon, John, and Jazzy. Y'all are awesome.